Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope you're enjoying the sunshine. It's not quite as hot today, so that's a good thing. And you're all over the state, so probably all kinds of different weather. My name's Melinda Kelly, and I'm a grant manager with the SALC program. I was here, we all saw each other last time, so I'm also joined by others on the SALC team. David Dodds is here and Michael Shaw. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the others involved in today's meeting. But before we get started, I wanted to let you all know that this webinar is being recorded in order to make it available for those that might not have joined us today. You probably see the recording button, and I think when you came in, you saw that. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. So now back to introductions. Ina Lupin is joining us, and she is the Community Assistance Program Manager with the Strategic Growth Council. And she's going to be providing a little brief Strategic Growth Council overview. And then the Cultivate team who will be heading up today's meeting, recognizing that the program had trouble getting some traction with planning grants a few years back. Strategic Growth Council committed to providing technical assistance to help local governments, planning agencies conceptualize projects and apply for funding. And Cultivate was instrumental in these efforts by engaging applicants in the Southern California area, some who are here today. So this group includes Joseph McIntyre with Ag Innovations in Sonoma County, and Amy McPhee and Serena Unger with Cultivate from San Francisco. And Serena's coming to us today from New Mexico, sunny New Mexico. So to get things started, here's a few quick reasons why we're here today. First, it's important to underscore the critical importance of the work that you are all doing. And I'm hearing such great things about the project, so it's exciting. Agriculture is not automatically a successful self-sustaining endeavor, as you know, particularly in light of the intensity of competing land uses. It requires stewardship and proactive planning to foster its continued vibrancy. So all your engagement efforts, partnership building, and tool development are indeed really worthwhile investments. And it's great to be here together to talk about the community engagement piece. So to support that work, it's important to know that you have many partners, many who are in the room today. So in light of that, today our goal really is to build connections, spark interest for future conversations and collaborations, to share stories, tips, tools, and best practices and resources. And I think after the kickoff meeting, everyone was, people were really excited about the conversations and sharing stories. And I hope that continues today and into the future. We'll be sending along the contact list so you guys can keep in touch. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ina.
Great, thank you, Melinda, and thanks for that great introduction. So yeah, I can just provide a little bit of background on the Strategic Growth Council for folks who may not be familiar with our organization. My name is Ina Lupin, again, Community Assistance Program Manager at SGC. And so SGC administers the SALC program in partnership with the Department of Conservation. DOC does a lot of the sort of implementation work, and many of you are probably more familiar with folks at the Department of Conservation than the Strategic Growth Council, but our council is part of the governor's office. Technically, we work very closely with the governor's office of planning and research, and our council is made up of 6 cabinet secretaries, 3 public members, and the chair of is the director of the Office of Planning and Research. We work across a number of different issue areas related to climate and public health, social equity, and we have a number of grant programs that, including SALC, of course, but a number of others as well. So if any of you are interested in some of our programs, many of them are funded through cap and trade and are looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible. And then we also provide technical assistance, as you will hear, a little bit more about today. But we provide technical assistance for the SALC program and then for a number of other programs. So I will stop there because we have a lot to cover today. But if anyone has questions about SGC or technical assistance program, please feel free to reach out to me. I will drop my contact information into the chat. And actually, if folks would like to introduce themselves in the chat as you all are trickling in, that would be great so that we can all know who's in the room. With that, I think I'll hand it over to Amy, who's going to walk us through our agenda for today. And I'm going to share my screen so you all can see it.
Thanks, Ina. The format today is very similar to our first session that we had in April. So Joseph will lead us off with just a background on thinking about new frameworks for community engagement. And then we're going to have a panel with Frank Chen from the County of Santa Barbara, Valerie Perez from the UCANR, and Lara from the City of McFarland. And then after that, we're going to break out into rooms and have small group discussions around what are your biggest community engagement challenges. And then at the end, we're going to ask you to take a minute to write down a key takeaway that you learned. And then we'll try to get you onto your day by 11:15. So with that, I'll hand it over to Joseph, and thanks all for being here today, and we'll see you soon.
Well, good morning to everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here. My name's Joseph McIntyre, and I have been working as a facilitator and a process artist for 2 decades, and the SALC project stands out in my career as being incredibly unique in its opportunity to connect with and really engage the community's deepest aspirations in a way that frequently planning processes don't or can't do. And so it's really with great pleasure I sort of lead us into the conversation today about sort of best practices in public participation. We'll do a little panel as Amy talked about. I wanted to give you just a little bit of a framework, something that may be helpful for you to think about as you think about your own work in public engagement. The road around public engagement has been long, and we've learned a lot over the past 20 and 30 years. When I think of public engagement, I think of a spectrum from very sort of rigidly controlled, like the 3 minutes that you might have in front of a board of supervisors, to engagement that's much more interactive, often takes place in community locations, and as Maria will share us with you later, in PTA meetings and in community halls, and often over dinner tables. So the whole nature of what it is that we're trying to do as SALC grantees when we authentically engage the public is quite different than what perhaps was best practice even as little as 10 years ago. Naturally, we are now, particularly in California, but I believe everywhere in the United States and around the world, aware of who is in the conversation and who maybe has not historically been. And so part of what we're wanting to do is to think about public engagement that actually touches everybody in the community and doesn't privilege particular members of the community, which is an interesting challenge. So I want you to think about it like this. Public engagement, you can think about it on one axis to being about breadth. How many people are involved? Now, certainly you could have a public meeting that had 300 people who were very shallowly involved, gave their 3 minutes of conversation and moved on. But when I speak of breadth, I think about listening deeply to multiple parts of the community. And in SALC, that means naturally listening to landowners and farmers, but you also have to listen to people who rent land, who work land, who supply folks in the community, who supply materials to landowners and growers. You have to think about adjacent landowners. You have to think about community members who have aspirations for their community around clean air, clean water, open space, jobs, economic development. So what happens is that our idea of who a stakeholder is in a project like SALC actually gets bigger and bigger. And it feels daunting a little bit, but actually this is really the case that many minds make a better outcome. We're less likely to experience resistance when we've authentically heard from the broad scope of our community. So the first thing I want you to encourage as you listen to our speakers today is how did they address breadth, this getting the widest group of stakeholders engaged. The second goes the other direction. We're often asked a problem, how to solve this thing? How do I solve ag land conservation? If you look at the problem in front of SALC in that way, as if it was isolated and not connected to everything else that goes on in your community, inevitably, you're going to experience challenge. Because ag land conservation doesn't exist outside of our efforts to ensure that there are adequate employment, adequate affordable housing, adequate open space, clean air and water, all of the things that go into the mix. And so now when I go to communities, I ask them not so much, how do I solve the problem, but what is the future that you're trying to create? What is the deepest aspiration that should be reflected in the work that we do together? Now imagine your SALC plan at the end that not only succeeded in reducing greenhouse gas emissions or avoiding them, keeping agriculture a vital part of the community and the culture of the community, but was also now part of the mosaic of the genuine aspiration for what's the future you want to create in your hometown. When we do that, we make it less of a planning exercise and more of an opportunity for us to take responsibility and agency around this future that we will live into through the decisions that we make. So when we talk about public participation today, yes, we're going to talk about some of the mechanics. How do we reach folks? How do we talk to folks? But I want you to just keep those two dimensions in mind. How broad can we get? And how deep is the question or the ask that we make of the people that we bring into the process? If we are able to work broadly and deeply simultaneously, my experience is communities will tell us amazing things about what they want to do. And that is incredibly affirming for them, for you, and makes an amazing SALC project. So with that, I want to turn to our panel and give them a chance to talk to you about their lived experience doing the work. And I think that'll be a nice reality check. So by the way, as we go along here, if you have questions, feel free to use the chat or we'll talk a little bit in the panel and I'll ask you to keep the general Q&A to your breakout rooms. But if something comes up, certainly add it to the chat so we can get to it later. But with that, I want to again welcome Valerie Perez from UCANR, Lara from the city of McFarland, and our third presenter, where are you? Oh, there you are, Frank, from the county of Santa Barbara. Now, for the three of you, I want to just start at the opening and just give the folks who are with us today just a little bit background on you and your project and how it ties into SALC and just a little context so that we can understand. And Valerie, you're up. I see you spotlighted, so you get to go first.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie Perez, and I didn't check. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Okay. So my name is Valerie Perez, and I work as a community education specialist for UC Cooperative Extension in Santa Cruz County, although I work with neighboring counties such as Monterey County and Santa Clara County. So my position was brought on almost 3 years ago now, with 9 other positions, all spread out throughout California, to help improve the engagement of the California Department of Food and Agriculture's Climate Smart Agriculture grants. I know that's a mouthful, but some of the programs may sound familiar to you guys. So one of them is the Healthy Soils Program and the State Water Efficiency and Enhancement Program. So what my job primarily is to improve the engagement with those programs. So when CDFA put out the grants, they realized that the grants are very technical and they weren't getting as many applicants as they thought they would due to the complexity of the grants. So they brought in our positions to help ease that process. So we, outreach for the programs as well as sign people up, and then we help them as well with the after process. Once they are awarded the grant, walking them through how, to implementing their practices, and if challenges arise, walking them through as well. My work has turned into focusing on helping small non-English speaking farmers in Santa Clara County. So right now I'm helping a group of 22 growers with their water grant as well as their soils grant. And so that's the majority of, my background today will be answering questions that derive from that background of helping those growers that are typically underserved.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And I so enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about your work. I'm going to ask you specifically about how to get those, to reach those underserved and under-recognized growers. Frank, tell us a little bit about your work in Santa Barbara County.
Sure. Thanks, Joseph. So my name is Frank. I'm a senior program specialist with the County of Santa Barbara's Sustainability Division. So about a year and a half ago, we were successful in applying for a grant put out by the Department of Conservation. It was a planning grant to essentially integrate natural and working lands into our upcoming 2030 Climate Action Plan update. So, really up until this DOC grant, our division has primarily worked in some of the traditional sectors called out in Climate Action Plan, so building, energy, transportation, waste, land use. So, really our knowledge and network of the ag sector was pretty limited. So, I think through this grant and through the work that I'm doing, we've really had to, in our experience, leverage existing networks to help us build out the network, and also leveraging our local university, UCSB, to help increase some of that research capacity and help us do some of the outreach work that we're currently engaged in.
Great, thanks, Frank. And I'm going to want to explore that process that you've gone through in trying to make connections with and understand more deeply the ag community, because it's, I think, a journey that many of us will understand. Maria, it's great to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about the city of McFarland and your journey around SALC.
Thank you, Joseph. The city of McFarland is in Kern County. We're in the Central Valley. We're a minority disadvantaged community. About little over 15,000 people live here in McFarland. I've worked here since 2015, so it's been a journey for me. I started as the grant writer here at the city, and then I moved on to being the community development director, where then about 3 years ago, I took on that job, and I started the general plan update and applying for grants to update all our planning documents and ensuring that they were up to date, and we get the latest, best practice when it came to public engagement. Our demographics, from the 90s to now, drastically change here in the city of McFarland. So being in that role, I was able to get going with a lot of these planning documents and able to secure money to do the work. That's probably one of our biggest challenge here in McFarland, is finding the funds, the resources to do some of this work. And now I'm the city manager. I've been the city manager for the last year, almost a year. In August, I'll be here for a year in this new role. and we continue to work with, with our staff to make sure that we finish, updating our general plan, the Sustainable Act plan, and they're living documents, and that's just to remind the community that these documents are living documents, and they are our blueprint for the future. So our roadmap. So it's been a journey. I'm excited to kind of share some of the stories with the group.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I was so inspired by our phone call and getting to know more about the city of McFarland and the amazing work that you're doing there. So I want to go around just really quickly and, hear from each of you. If you were to pick a best practice, something that you think is really important to do, as it relates to the audiences that you've been really thinking about or working with, or the friends and neighbors, really, to call them audiences is a terrible demeaning of it. These are our neighbors, our friends, our community members. Valerie, what do we need to do? How do we reach those farmers that historically may be flying under the radar, if you would?
Thank you, Joseph. So this was an issue I identified when I was first hired. When I came on, I tried to attend as many outreach events as I possibly could. And I started to realize that the same group of people were coming to these events. And I was thrilled to see that, because you have a good solid group of individuals that are interested and they're involved. But I was also sitting there wondering, this isn't all of these 10 farmers or growers can't be everyone in my area. So why are other people not involved? So what I started to do was link up with other partner organizations that had already developed that connection. So I started going out with my local RCD, and I would just sit in the back and let them do, their exchange with the farmer or grower. And the fact that the RCD had already developed that connection with the farmer and then was introducing me as, a partner, it eased that transition a lot, because what you find with these underserved populations or socially disadvantaged farmers is there's a lot of hesitation with working with agencies like myself. Either they have joined a program in the past and it didn't work out well, so they have hesitation now, or they're really busy. So the easiest way to develop that connection, in my opinion, is going out with organizations that have already developed that. And then close to second to that point is hosting a lot of workshops in the same area with the same material, because what happens is word of mouth is your best friend. And so your first workshop may have 10 people, and then down the road, those 10 people will go out and speak to, 5 more. And then pretty soon your workshop will have, 20 to 30 people.
Beautiful. So, partnering with organizations that have relationships and frequency, being out there. Now, Frank, I think you're like many planning organizations, tons of work, lots of pressure on you, a lot of deadlines, a lot of political pressures in terms of, working with the boards and other folks. But you were on quite the journey to sort of make an authentic connection to agriculture. What worked for you? What was helpful?
Yeah, I think very, very similar to Valerie. We had to leverage and lean on the existing organizations that have been historically doing this work already. So we through this project, we have set up a what we call a land stewardship and a regenerative ag subcommittee. And this is really part of a broader collaborative that our division has been working on, a regional climate collaborative. So through this subcommittee, really, we tackle topics that relate to my project, but even going beyond that, we welcome other topics and other concerns that kind of organically bubbles up through these conversations. So I think what has worked for us is really providing that space for people to come together, and kind of parallel to the Region of Ag subcommittee, we also have an equity advisory and outreach committee that we've created, and that committee we were successful in gaining the buy-in of our board of supervisors to essentially commit a stipend for community members to participate. So I believe that the total budget for that was around $19,000, and it really provides that extra I guess resource for a lot of community members to participate, because that was something that we were hearing quite often, was that oftentimes these organizations are drawn upon by other planning agencies doing their planning work. So it was kind of a coordination with other departments and other planning agencies to kind of buy into this, because what we were realizing is that a lot of people were doing this type of work. So this kind of committee and stipend was an attempt to kind of centralize this a little bit. That way other planning organizations can also tap into this resource. So
that's some great tools there. And I think the idea of the stipend, it's particularly important because it addresses one of the primary barriers for getting participation from historically isolated communities, particularly if we're talking about farm workers and others who may have to take off work to be part of this. There's a lot of good reasons to make that possible, to create kind of a more level playing field. So let's put that on the list as something for folks to think about. Now, Maria, I really want to talk about, how do we talk about and reach community like the folks who live in McFarland, that reflect the deep diversity of California, and often cases are folks that have not participated in kinds of processes like this. What have you learned?
Well, I learned that, in order for us to get we do different activities. One of the first things I did when I started here in McFarland was attending the parent-teacher meetings after school. I remember that when I first got hired, the planner at the time was like, we always have workshops, but typically the same, 2 people show up or no one shows up. And I was like, well, let me do a bilingual flyer. I remember doing it, it was Spanish and English. About 85% of our population speaks Spanish here in McFarland. So we did a bilingual flyer. We connected with the school district. The school district helped us distribute those flyers to all parents. We probably printed close to 4,000 flyers and we dropped them off in every site. And then I attended a meeting I had at I've lived here since I started working here. I've lived in McFarland. I have kids that attend our schools. So I started attending the meetings, connecting with the parents, inviting them to our meetings, letting them know that, hey, our city is working on different projects. We need your input. Building that trust. I think that's the biggest challenge for us, is building the trust. A lot of our friends and family, they're not used to having local government going to them and asking for their input. A lot of them are used to, we only deal with government when we have to pay taxes, or we're dealing with some legal process that they have to do. So it is a change for a lot of our community. Like here, now I feel like I've been here over 5 years, so I've established those relationships with our local agencies. We're a small little town that the word of mouth gets out quickly, and they've seen some of the outcome of those workshops. I think Joseph and I were talking about, when I started, I tried, posters, visual. That's another thing, when you do your workshops, try to be very visual, offer people different ways of expressing themselves. Sometimes they don't want to speak up in a crowd. So I would do, index cards where they would write what they were thinking and drop them off, before they left in a box, or a survey. I also did online surveys, very, simple survey, nothing complicated, bilingual. At one time, we also did a raffle. Those that participated were they enter a raffle for a gift card. So we've done those creative ideas to encourage people to attend. We've also worked with the art class at the high school to involve the youth. How do we get our young ones involved? Even our little ones. We had one of our planning grants, we were able to work with the art class at the high school, and we were able to provide them with art supplies and a scholarship to some of those kids. And they were able to, submit different drawings of how they wanted it to see McFarland in the future, what was important for them. And we use some of the artwork for our study, like, for our cover page, recognizing our community that this work is being done because of their input. And just reminding them, when you do get a project complete, I'm thinking of a park that we completed. It took us 5 years to get it done, but we applied for multiple funding sources, and they all require public engagement. And just reminding them, this park was done, thanks to your input, and it's hard work, but just informing a lot of our the population that I work with, they're not very familiar on how grants work. They don't understand that, okay, a low-income community, we don't have the funds to go build a state-of-the-art park. We have to, compete with other communities to get the money to be able to build, whatever we're planning to build. But it starts with the planning. It starts with, okay, updating our general plan, our, sustainable ag plan. Where do you see McFarland in the future, and what kind of parks, facilities do you want? That's where it starts. And then we're able to go ask the state or the feds to assist with some of these projects.
Thanks so much, Maria. And there's so much richness in what you shared there. One of the key things that I want to underline for people is that community engagement isn't inviting folks to your house. It's getting an invitation to go to their house. And that's a key pathway. And I think we do that by partnering, as Valerie has said, and Frank, we find places where folks are. It's about creating relationship, which ultimately creates trust. It's having multiple ways of meeting people. So it's not always going to be talking back and forth, because that's not everybody's best way. So sometimes it's good to have one-on-one things or surveys or other tools. It's about that breadth. Youth is a great example of breadth, and youth can bring enormous energy and inspiration to a group. People are reminded why we do this. We're doing this for our future generations. And then closing the loop on things with the community, letting them know what successes their efforts have had. I think all of those are really great takeaways for great public engagement. Now, I need to speed up just a little bit because we only have about 15 minutes left. And there's a few more things I want to make sure we cover. If you were to say, identify one area that often is sort of a blind side or missed, or something that we should be careful around, what might it be when it comes to public engagement? So Frank, anything that's shown up for you, that's something that you sort of notice, like, that's not the way, that I won't do it that way again.
Yeah, well, I think for us is investing in long-term relationships. You know, we see these subcommittees that we've created as serving as an organization that's serving beyond just my project.
Right.
So I think that's very important. And you know, just another thing too, and this is a bit trivial, but as we were out there engaging and getting people out, the farmers and ranchers out to engage with us, you know, just being mindful of the technology that we're using and
Yeah.
when we're scheduling meetings, you know, because a lot of them are out there doing their normal work, so it's important to be mindful and accommodating to them.
That's perfect. And I think you highlight one thing that I think, Maria, that you would echo. I think that this relationship that you're trying to build, it's not transactional. It's not you give me your input, I give you a plan. This is something that's real, and it's based on respect. And that respect is, I'm not going to call you when I know you're in the middle of the field on your tractor, right? So we have to understand each other a little bit to do that. So those are really great. Maria, what would be something that a pitfall or a blindside that you've noticed that sometimes people fall into when they're trying to reach out beyond maybe where they've typically gone?
I would probably say, you know, for us, the timing of engagement, understanding your audience and knowing that a lot of them work 8 to 5, and you might have to, you know, do it at night or on a weekend, or attend a community event that it's on a weekend, that you're able to, you know, put up a canopy and get their input and get them to stop by and ask you questions. Understanding that, you know, understanding your community and knowing, you know, where they work and their work hours, and just being respectful of that. And if otherwise, you're going to get the same, you know, typically your retired people that are, you want their input too. So maybe having that flexibility, doing a morning workshop for those that are able to do morning, and doing one in the afternoon. So just being flexible and knowing that it's going to be multiple approaches that you will have to take to really get a good understanding of what you're trying to, you know, the group you're trying to work with.
Thank you. And Valerie, it sounds like almost a perfect lead to what something you said that really stuck with me, like the necessity of going back and back and back and finding those different times. But when, you know, when working with some of the folks that you deal with, what are some of the blind sides that occasionally show up that you know, folks who are starting the SALC journey might be aware of?
Yeah, one example that came to mind was for my first workshop with the Chinese growers in Santa Clara County. My PowerPoint was just flooded with information, and I got up there and started presenting, and I have a translator on the side of me, so I would present and then the translator would speak after me, and they just all looked so lost because I was just bombarding them with way too much information. So I learned that after my first meeting to be a little bit more concise, you know, when you're introducing something new. And then from there, if you get the engagement you're looking for, you know, to go in depth. But I seemed like I scared people away after the first meeting because it was just way too much. And then the other thing I did want to just echo was it's going to vary so greatly depending on the area you're in. So we can throw out all of this really good information at you guys, but more importantly, you need to go out and figure out what kind of you know, community you guys are around and what they need from you.
Valerie, as a, you know, somebody who's been doing this a while, I think you pointed out something that I see all the time, which is that, you know, if we're happen to be close to SALC or inside a planning process, we breathe this, we understand it, the terms, the acronyms, everything else, and to assume our neighbors and friends, you know, or even in that same place, is just not being very mindful. And so I really appreciate you highlighting that journey with the Chinese growers that you were working with. So important. Now, I want to, again, keeping our pace up because we've got about 10 minutes now. I do want to ask you this. How do you reach the people you don't know you need to reach? How do you get out to those corners of the community, which historically are out there that, you know, maybe you don't have relationships with? Now, I know you've talked about partnering with other groups, but this idea of like really understanding the breadth. And I can tell you that in Santa Clara County, one of the things that changed their SALC grant was, or approach, was when they started talking to a smaller growers and got a different view of what actually was going on in the county. And that caused a whole change of thinking, but they kind of stumbled on that. What do you think?
Yes.
And whoever wants to jump in.
Oh, sorry, I'll go ahead. I was invited to present materials for the Healthy Soils program and the water program by a small farm advisor in Santa Clara County. So that kind of aided that transition a lot, which again goes back to the partnering with local agencies, right? And really leaning on that connection that they've already developed. But if I want to add something new, it's really been extremely helpful to tap into those communities that aren't normally engaged by having a translator. So if it is possible, if it's feasible, you can afford it, having a translator to translate your documents, to translate your PowerPoints, being out on all of your site visits, I make sure a translator's there. 20 out of the 22 growers that I'm working with do not speak English. Some of them speak a little bit of English, but they prefer to speak Chinese to the translator. And I feel like that makes them a lot more comfortable and open to speaking about, you know, the difficulties they're having with the grant. And so if I didn't have the help of my translator, I, one, wouldn't have, you know, any of those growers. And two, I just wouldn't have that connection that we developed now.
Yeah. Maria, what about for you? How do we reach the folks that we maybe don't even know we should be reaching? Really pushing ourselves out to the edges.
I think connecting not just with local, you know, your local agencies. I've went to, you know, even local churches, reaching out to your churches, and if you get invited to attend and learn from, you know, here in McFarland, you know, we have, you know, people always, you know, if you ever come to McFarland, you'll see that we have a church almost in every corner in McFarland. We have a lot of churches. So if you, for us, it was just partnering with not only our, you know, our school district or the rec and park, but let's reach out to our churches. Let's reach out to our nonprofits, the Leos, the Lions, the Chamber. And I was able to connect with different people, but also being able to have a translator. I myself speak Spanish, so if I know someone speaks Spanish, I address them in their language. You know, I speak to them in Spanish, and I try to connect with them and get to know them a little more of who they are, you know, where they work, building that relationship. So I'm with Valerie. If you are, you know, working with a community that needs to have a translator, make sure you have one, because I'm thinking of our general plan workshops that we had with Cal Poly. We're working with Cal Poly, and we had the students did a great PowerPoint presentation, you know, with a lot of images and everything, but they didn't have a translator. Luckily, I was there and I was able to translate. But the minute that, you know, I started speaking in Spanish and explaining to the audience what we were doing, people had a lot of questions. They were raising their hand, they were engaging. So it's critical that you understand your community and what you're going to need to connect with them, whether it would be a translator, visuals, making sure you have those tools so you're able to connect.
Thank you so much, Maria. Now, I want to, Frank, I'm going to go to the last question in the sequence here, just to give us a chance to close the loop. It's one thing to go out to the community and effectively hear them. It's another thing altogether to turn that into good policy, particularly when the information that community members might be bringing you could be challenging. It might challenge some of the basic assumptions about how we deal with land and how we think about cities or what our priorities should be. So how do we authentically and genuinely do the best we can do to assure that the input that we get is genuinely incorporated in the work that happens and in the outcomes? So Frank, a quick thought from you. And I realize I'm not closing on an easy subject because this is really the challenge of our time.
Yeah, I think what we hear quite often from our ag community is that they want to implement a lot of these best practices, but being located where they're kind of caught up in multiple regulatory jurisdictions with the Coastal Commission and also county planning agency. There's a lot of regulatory barriers that they see disincentivize them from doing the work that we want to see happen. So I think at the very least it's really just limiting or trying to understand the scope and the impact of the work that you're doing, and trying to limit any potential unintended consequences, because I think policies can do that. It can go the other way and disincentivize folks from doing what is right. So
what's right, yeah. So being mindful of the potential unintended consequences, that often is a challenge. Valerie, what about for you? What's worked to make sure that not only have we engaged, but we've heard?
Yeah, in my case, the grants that I work on provide a lot of opportunities for public comments. And one really great opportunity I had this past year was joining the Water Programs Advisory Board. And I did that because I got such amazing information from the growers that I was working with on what was not working with the program for them. So they're really small farmers, they don't speak English. And I took their advice and proposed changes for the grant, and those changes are being voted upon, and hopefully we will see those changes in the coming years, and that will open up the opportunity for more small farmers that aren't English speakers to apply and not see these challenges when they look at the grants.
Well, that's so great, Valerie, and that really speaks to the importance of using your strength and your credibility to carry forward the message we hear from community members. Maria, I'll let you close on this. How have you found a way to see that the will and the aspirations of the residents of McFarland are turned into actual results that they care about?
I think that for me here at the city is also encouraging your elected officials to attend these workshops so they can hear it from their constituents. It's so powerful when a council member hears it from 3-4 different residents, and it really, I feel that it really gives them that energy of, okay, these are the people that voted me in, and this is what they want. And it helps. My advice would be, encourage your elected officials to attend some of these outreaches, events, public engagement, because they're going to learn and hear things from their residents that typically they wouldn't. And it will help them make those hard decisions when it comes to making policy. And I encourage our residents to also attend our council meetings, and especially if there's a policy or if there's something that council's gonna consider that might impact them. If you're working with your local businesses and they're considering, revising the business license fees, encourage your local businesses. Hey, they're going to be discussing this, and attend and let them know, how it's going to benefit your business or how it's not. So that would be my advice for me. That has seemed to work when you get your elected officials. You have to be careful because there's the Brown Act. Not all of them can attend, but make sure that a few of them do attend and hear, from their community what the community wants.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thanks to everyone. And this was such an illuminating look into the challenges and the opportunities of public engagement. I'm so grateful that each of you are out in the world doing the work that you do, and you took the time to be with us today. No doubt our other guests on the call will have questions for you and an opportunity to love an opportunity to talk at more depth. And we're going to do that right now by jumping into small groups. What we'll ask our presenters, they'll be put into 3 small groups, and then the remainder of our attendees will all get split up. And really the focus of this next thing is to explore what are their community engagement challenges. That's something certainly that the 3 of you can weigh in on, but there'll be lots of great ideas amongst other members who are already attending. And I think much as you described, Maria, in your concluding comments, we can all learn from each other. And I think that's the essence of good community engagement. What can I learn from this moment? How can I be changed by what I hear? And how can I then take that information and turn it into something that reflects some great benefit for my community? That seems like a pretty good gig for me, and I hope others enjoy it as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our Zoom host, and who will get us sorted out.
Great. I think we're ready. I'm going to send you all to your rooms. Have a great conversation, everyone.
I think we've concluded the core of what we wanted to cover today. Just again, want to thank our guest presenters for being with us, and just to continue to remind you, go wide and ask the big, deep questions that need to be asked, so that you can have SALC be part of not just a grant program that you have, but an answer to a bigger problem, which is what's the future you're trying to create in your communities. And with that, I'll turn the floor back over to our friends at Department of Conservation and to Ina.
Thanks, Joseph. Well, that was great. I really enjoyed my breakout session, and I'm sure you guys enjoyed yours as well. So thank you for your being involved and being engaged, and bringing lots of great questions forward. We're going to be sending up a follow-up. Try that again. We're going to be sending a follow-up survey sometime probably within the next week or so. So just to kind of get a sense and get some feedback. But if you have a second right now, it'd be great to just put in the chat one of your top key takeaways from today. Just add it into the chat and share what you've learned, either in the breakout, in the panels, and all of that. What really sort of bubbles up and resonates with you, and you're going to go, oh, that one piece, I'm so excited. So please go ahead and add that. So as far as next steps, look for a follow-up email, which I'll send an updated list of the attendees, and also some resources for you all. I think Serena's put together some great resources, and then I have some resources for sort of doing virtual engagement, how to do that. Some great resources there. And what else was I going to put? Also, I'm going to drop into the chat real quick. Here's a link to all the projects, all the planning projects. So if you wanted to know a little bit more about some of everybody else's projects, there's sort of a quick little summary of each of them there, which is kind of interesting. If you don't get the link right now, just go to the SALC website and it'll be there. And other than that, I'd just say, take advantage of the connections that you've made today, and follow up with people, and keep the conversation going. You're going to be learning as you go, and it's really nice to have people out there to share that with, and go, what am I doing again? Help. And then beyond that, if you have any questions about SALC or any of our program stuff, go visit our website, and for the Strategic Growth Council, you can go to theirs as well. And I know probably none of you are going to be applying for the SALC planning grant this round, but please do share the word with those that may be interested out there. The deadline for this round is July 1st for the pre-proposal, and then September 10th for the final. So spread the word. I think that's about it. Thank you for all your comments. One of them is meet community right where they are and ask the right questions. Awesome. Have frequent workshops in the same place to take advantage of word of mouth. At your engagement event, provide only key points and leave lots of time for Q&A. Yeah, I see that all the time. It's like, there's never enough time to have the conversations and ask the questions. Ensuring that translation is available is super key, both in terms of your materials and in terms of when you're on site, and also making sure that in the translation, that the translations are also audience appropriate. Sometimes you can't just translate English to Spanish and have it be appropriate. So make sure that it's also audience appropriate. Changing your communication methods, literally and figuratively, to allow community to better understand and learn. Yeah, these are great. So sounds like everyone got sort of charged up. So excited to see that. Anything else, Joseph or Amy?
Thanks to one and all.
Yeah, really thank you for all your hard work out there and doing the great planning that you're doing.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Bye.